right, welcome back. We're going to get started with finaling our walk cycle, and one of the first things we're going to do is just kind of evaluating it here. I mentioned in the previous tutorial that he's got some jerkiness going across his midline here, so the chest and the hips have a double beat to them right now. So that's why you're getting this jerkiness right there. And then he's still in the stepped and flat mode, which is also making him look a little bit jerky too. So down here in our preferences, if we go under animation, this is where we had weighted tangents, and the default tangent was flat for the incoming, and then the outgoing tangent is stepped. So at this point what we're going to do is just switch back over. Some people prefer spline, so you can set it to spline. That's the most standard selection there. You can also just set it to auto. It's the same thing. Sometimes I like using clamped on the feet, so I may actually come back and select clamped just for the feet. It helps to kind of keep them from going through the floor and just stay on the surface a little bit better. But we'll go ahead and just work with spline here and hit save. Okay, and then let's switch our workspace over here to animation, and that's going to bring up the graph editor down here. And what that's going to allow us to do is when we select one of the controllers, we can see all of the keyframes, and this is what stepped and flat looks like. So it moves along here from the first keyframe, and then when it hits the second one, it does a stair step kind of tangent move across here. And what we're going to do is start selecting these one by one and switching these over. So we set this up over here for any additional keyframes that we may set when we start doing our breakdown, so we don't go back to that stepped and flat mode. Okay, so I'm going to switch over here to my perspective mode, and I've got the chest selected here, and I'm just going to give myself a little bit more room and go ahead and look at the Y translate, the Y rotate. Okay, so what I'm going to do is switch this over to spline. If we hover over these, we can see which ones they are. So this is the spline one. This is the clamped one that I mentioned earlier that I'm going to probably use for the feet. But let's go ahead and use spline for this tangent. And we can see a little bit of jerkiness going on in here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of clean this up a little bit, and we don't actually need all of these points here. Okay, so we've got it set here on 17 as our halfway point, and I'm not sure why this stopped right here. It should have continued on out, and I may have lost a final keyframe here. So if I go back to frame 1 and take a look at where we were, so 7.417, and I'm going to just go ahead and round that off, 7.5. So we're going to copy from here and paste here. All right. So if we come out here, we can see it, that's the tangent that it took right there from our new setting. Let's go ahead and delete this one right here, and this actually should get flattened right here. So let's go ahead and just flatten that one and come back and see if we can set it up and get it to go correctly. All right, so in this case, I'm just looking at the tangents here and how they line up. And something to help us to understand how these are connecting, since it's important that they connect as a cycle, even though if we look on frame 1 and we've got the 7.5 now, and we go to frame 33 and we've got the same information, if these tangents are not connecting properly, they are going to create a subtle little bump or shift in the animation that you're going to have a hard time detecting where it's coming from. So to visualize that, you want to come over to here and go under curves, and we've got these two up here for infinity. So pre is the incoming, post is the outgoing. So we're just going to select cycle here on both of these. So we want curves, pre-infinity, cycle. So we've got both of those selected. And then under view, we're going to turn on infinity. So now what we can see is this pinching happening right here. So I'm going to grab both of these here and just flatten them for right now. And you can see what that did to our curve here. So I'm just going to undo that for a moment. We've got this pinching action right here. And if we play it, he's still a little jerky because he's got the other rotations and whatnot have not been set over to out of that step mode. But this pinch right here, it's a quick ease out, ease in. So it's accelerating and then shifting directions very rapidly, is creating a little problem with the animation. So this is what we want the curve to look like now. Okay, this is a nice clean curve. We've just got our main rotations here for the start, the end, and then the opposite for the middle. Okay, so we're going to actually come back up here and select all of these. So we don't really have any translate going on, but we do have some rotation happening here on the X and on the Z. So let's select both of these. I just held down Control and grabbed both of those, and I'm just highlighting everything here. And I'm actually going to go to clamped on this one and just take a look at it. Okay, so I think if you look at the difference between these two right here, here's spline, it's a little cleaner looking, and here's clamped. So we get a lot of ease in, ease out. You can see how it flattens here. Let's go ahead and go with spline on this one, and then go ahead and isolate the rotation. So I'm going to go to this one here. We'll start with the, let's go ahead and just start with the rotate X. Okay, so this is where we're getting this kind of double beat thing going on. So the X rotation, if we hit E on the keyboard here, we can see which is the X. So it's this up-down movement right here. Okay, so he's here and there. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can smooth this out a little bit right here. Okay, so I'm going to take these off and take these off here and go ahead and grab all of these across here, flatten them, and let's come down here to the rotate Z and also do a little bit of cleanup right here. Okay, so the Z is the kind of motion where he's going side to side here. Okay, so we can see this going on. So he's in this direction here, and then pops over to here, and then goes back to there. So what I'm going to do is actually do a pretty dramatic cleanup here and just try getting rid of all of these. And again, coming up here and just flattening these out. Okay, let's take a look at his chest here. So it's still a little jerky here, but if we just kind of isolate and focus on this area right here, we can see his chest is starting to look a lot better. Okay, we're getting a nice swivel. Okay, and a nice rotation in all of those different directions here. Okay, let's go down to the hips, and we're going to do a similar thing here with the hips. The hips have pretty much the same issue going on with too many keyframes in there. Okay, so I'm going to shift select and just grab all of these right here. Grab the curves. Alright, just grabbing those and going to spline and then isolating them. I like to start with the Y rotate. And again, I've lost this right here, so I'm going to just copy this one, go down here to 33 and paste it. Like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab these keyframes here that we don't need. Come across here and flatten those. Okay. And if we want to check the infinity, but we don't really need to on this one, let's go ahead and grab all three of these and turn on the infinity cycle and post infinity cycle. And yeah, we can see we've got a really nice curve here now for the Y rotation. Okay, let's go over to X. Okay, so nothing in X. We may come back and do a little work on that. So this rotation here, you can see this is doing something funky right here with the tangent, so I'm going to just go ahead and flatten that, flatten this one, and so this is where we're getting this kind of double beat thing going on. Alright, so let's go ahead and just knock out these in-between frames here. Okay, it gives us a nice rotation, and just go ahead and check the others. They should be fine. And play this. Okay, so we're getting a pretty good swivel there, and let's take a look at how much it's tipping this way. Okay, so that's this motion right here. It could get a little bit more exaggerated. So we can take a look at that a little bit later. I kind of want to go through here and get everything sort of into a final state, and then we can start coming back and evaluating these right here. So it's just a little over 4. We could probably push it a little bit more, but we'll come back and do that a little later. Okay, so we've got those two resolved. And then I'm going to move on to this root control right here, grabbing that and grabbing everything in here and going to spline. And then we'll start isolating these. So these mostly have translates on them and not rotates. Okay, so just mostly the translate X and Y are our big ones right here. Okay, so again, we want to sort of evaluate that, the up-down motion. Okay, that's looking good. And we will probably keep that. This one has a big effect on our feet. You can see our feet are really popping around right now. So we're going to leave both of these alone. The thing that we do want to do is just check our infinity right here. So for some reason, I think I may have done it on the whole thing. Let's just select all. Okay, that's sort of broken there. I'm going to deselect that, and yes, I am actually missing quite a few keyframes here. So I'm going to go down to here and say copy and paste. Alright, let me just go and check these here and see if they got a little messed up. Okay, that looks alright. That one's okay. And let's start working on the root one here. Okay, so we've got everything in place here now. Okay, so just checking these here for connecting, and let's isolate those, and it looks like the infinity isn't working quite right here, so let's do that again. Sometimes you have to repeat these. Okay, so yes, so now we can see it here, and this is one that we don't want to flatten. So we've got a curve that is continuing, a motion that is continuing through here, and what we want to do is just make sure that we've got a nice smooth transition. So it's adjusting this over here and then coming back, make sure I can see both of them, and adjusting this side over here. Okay, so if we look at that, it gives us a really nice smooth transition. And same thing here, I usually come in here and start cleaning these up just a little bit. And I may come back and delete these at some point, so for now I'm going to leave them in. But I've got a nice transition here. I can push that a little bit more. Okay, and we can just see what it's doing here now. Okay. Same thing here. Let's go ahead and take a look at these and turn that on. Okay, and taking a look at the connection here. Okay. So in instances like this, I usually take things out, but because this is really affecting our feet and how our feet hit the ground, I am going to leave these in here right now until we start working with the feet, which is what we're going to work on next. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the right foot. Select these. And I am going to go to clamped on this one. Okay, and start working my way down here. Okay, so we've got our translate Y, that's looking good. The Z is looking good. Okay, so hey, look. Okay, and then just working our way down here. And let's go down here a little more and check the heel ball. Okay, let's turn on post infinity and pre infinity. Okay. And we will keep these like this for right now and just evaluate the feet. Okay. Yes, there's a little bit of a double bounce going on right here. Alright, so let's go and select the other foot and do the same thing. So we're just going to grab these and go to clamped and step back out here, and so there's a little bit of a double beat on the foot here when it's hitting the back, but that's actually not too bad. Our feet actually do that when they start transitioning the weight over. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. So I think it still just needs a little bit more rotation happening in the hips. We'll come back and address that once we're through converting all of our curves over here. Alright, so you kind of get the sense of what I'm doing here. So I'm going to just go to Q here and shift select a lot of these here and the head, and make sure they are all selected here and turned over to spline. And it doesn't look like I had much going on there. And now I'm going to start working with the arms, starting with clavicles. Okay, so I'm going to actually shift select these and grab everything here, go to spline, and with them selected, I'm going to go to curves and do the pre and post infinity again. And again, you can see the really severe pinching going on right here. So I'm going to grab these and flatten them, come up to the front, our first frame, and flatten those as well. So we've got a nice transition happening. Okay, and then same thing here on the arms, starting with the shoulders, grabbing these, going to spline, and checking our curves. So again, we've got the ease in and ease out that's being pinched, so we're just going to flatten it here and here. Okay. Right, down to the elbows. Going to spline and then checking our tangents again. Okay, so with this curve here, I think we probably don't want to necessarily flatten that. So flattening it is not the answer for all of them. It works for some, but not others. So this one here, we can probably flatten that one. This one here. Okay, so that one is working. Now with this one here, F here, it looks more like it looks like it's connecting okay. So I think that is the elbow. Yeah, so it's making a pretty decent connection there. Alright, so let's just kind of check these. So this is the one that I had a little concern about that we can now see. So it's the Y rotations, and it's not quite making a smooth transition here. So we're going to make a little adjustment here, and adjustment there, and that looks a lot better. So we're definitely going to be coming back here and probably removing some of these, especially this right here, and just checking it possibly with some offsets for the drag. Okay, let's get the other elbow here, so this side, and just checking. Okay. Alright, so those are looking good. Let's move down to the wrist now. Okay, so we still need the wrist as far as like adding the drag in there. Okay, yeah, we definitely don't have any drag yet, so we'll be adding that in. And we'll probably add a little bit of flexing with the fingers too. Okay, let's select things like this and just make sure they are in a spline state. Okay, and that should be everything. Let's just grab the whole character here and just take one last look. Yeah, so it looks like everything is out of the stepped and flat mode. And we can save our scene. Save scene as, and I'm just going to call this walk cycle. So finaling it. You can also call it splining. Version 01. Okay. Alright, and then let's just take a look at the character walking here. Yeah, so we can see some little jerkiness going on in the arms, and this is a real common thing to have happen. So we've got sort of this double bounce thing happening, a little jerkiness there that we're going to take care of. And we also need to get some rotation in. So one of the things that is missing here is why it's kind of looking a little stiff. So when the arm rotates back here, or swings back here, it should also be rotating like this. Okay, so we rotated up here. Rigs that are a little bit more articulated may have the ability to do that here as well. So this one doesn't allow us to rotate here. It's got that fixed rotation here just on the Y. Okay, so that's a couple of things that we're going to do. So we're going to kind of rotate this one in. So let me step back here. Okay, so I'm going to rotate it in. Here, hit S and copy that. Paste it down here. Okay, and then we want to do something similar to the other side. So we've got symmetry. Okay, so we're going to select this shoulder here. So we rotated it right here. Okay, and I'm probably going to pull these guys out here and maybe go to frame 17, and we will want to rotate it in like this. Okay, hit S. Alright, so I'm just watching that flow, and it goes back there, and that's looking pretty good. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and take that information here. Alright, so I'm actually going to just round these out. It's 30. And same thing here. 30. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily have to go the exact amount in the opposite direction. We just leave that at 25. Okay, and let's go ahead and do that here. So we'll find our frame 1. Okay, so that's where the character is in the forward position. So let's go ahead and rotate it. And 25 here, and hit S, and then we'll go to, we'll copy that, go down to 33, paste it. Okay, and then come back to 17, and we're going to rotate it in like that at 30, hit S. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Alright, so we're getting a little bit of rotation there. And the stiffness that we're seeing there, we need to come in and start working on what's called the drag. Okay, and we also need to start animating the hands as well for the overlapping action, which is kind of the more formal term for calling it drag. Okay, so it's just what it is it's following the main action. The main action is on the arms is happening up here, and if you have ever animated a pendulum where it's got a usually there's like 3 joints like this, very much like an arm. So the main action is up here on the arm, and then we've got the secondary actions happening down here that are following the main action, usually offset by a couple of frames. So that's what we're going to start working on next. We'll come back and work on